Welcome to another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. And you know what? At Sweet Tea and Coffee, we give the people what they want.
That's right.
And today we are giving the people what they want. People have been beating the door down to try to get us to interview the great Matt Murray. We teased it in the last episode. We said it was coming. The people have wanted it. They've demanded it. And the day is here. We're interviewing Matt Murray. And today we're going to just spend time on our favorite Matt Murray stories because there's so many of them. Yeah. There's no way we cover it in 30 minutes. But today we've got the great Matt Murray. All right, so I said we've got the great Matt Murray in here. My name is Kendall McDonald. I'm the lead pastor here at Fredonia Hill. I've got my co-host, as always, with me, Blake Russell.
Yeah, I'm here. I was trying to think of something to say, like clever, after you said my name, my introduction. But
it's episode, 6? We've run out of clever.
We're not fun anymore.
We're bone dry on clever. But the good news for you is that you don't have to just deal with the two of us.
That's right.
Today we have Matt Murray in the house. Matt, say what's up.
What's up, everybody?
Yeah, you guys know Matt. If you've been around Fredonia Hill at all, you know Matt Murray. He's our discipleship pastor here and a really good friend. The three of us have a great friendship. So this is perfect for Matt to come in and hang out and sweet tea and coffee and just to talk about his life. And Matt has an interesting journey. So we don't know. I don't know. Blake, you're going to have to help me classify Matt. He's a little tricky to classify. He feels very Texan. He has Texas sports allegiances. Yeah. But also, he has some sports.
Not sure
Florida
if I could give him
stuff.
the native license plate.
I know it's really that's right. So Matt's been from Florida to Texas, back to Florida, and back to Texas. Most specifically, not just Texas, but East Texas. So start off, Matt, just by giving us a little bit of a story on those journeys. How you started out in Florida, Texas. Just how does all that work?
Yeah, I grew up, spent the first 17 and a half years of my life in Florida and moved out to Texas right after I graduated high school. So actually, this is about the midway point. I'm getting to the midway point of half of my life in Florida and half of my life in Texas.
Wow.
So I'm getting close to that Texan line,
Which is why you're so hard to categorize.
Exactly. So came out here after I graduated high school. Family moved out here. My dad's a pastor, so dad took a church out here and spent some time out here in ministry, and then went back to Florida for a short stint doing some ministry there, and then back to Texas a few months later, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. So you came. I'm right in saying this, right? When you first came to Texas, you came straight to East Texas, right? I mean,
correct. Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, the journey has been interesting. Matt came to Fredonia Hill. When did you arrive here? It's been 7 years, 8 years?
Yeah, it was August of 2014.
Okay. So that's kind of a cool fact. The three of us have been doing ministry here, specifically at Fredonia Hill now together. How long have we been together? Like 7 years? Is that about right? Because Matt was here after Blake. I've been here nearly 10. Blake's been here in 8 or 9, somewhere in there, and then Matt 7. So we've been hanging out for quite some time. I'll never forget when Matt came here, Blake. I think you'll remember this. We all gathered at a Chick-fil-A, and the funny part about it was I think we tried to go somewhere else. Matt, we didn't know Matt yet, and he'd been interviewed and was coming, and so it was kind of this moment where the rest of the staff,
we're going to see who this guy is.
Yeah, we've heard about him, and that's always a funny moment in church world because a lot of times the interview process takes place kind of separate from the rest of the staff, which is what it is, but then there's always a moment where you got to meet this person that you've been hearing about. And I think we tried to go somewhere and it wasn't.
Yeah, we met at Fuzzy's and we walked in. Like we're all walked in, sat down, and they're like, "We're not open yet." We're like, "Your front door is wide open. We're here." So we had to relocate to Chick-fil-A.
So all good things happen at Chick-fil-A, right? So shout out to Chick-fil-A, and that's where we met Matt Murray and grilled him over some chicken biscuits. I remember it was like super early in the morning. It was a random Saturday or something. And so anyway, but we've known Matt a long time. And if you've known Matt a long time, his wife Megan, their sweet family, there are, as I said earlier, there are so many great stories. Matt's just one of these guys that has interesting encounters with people, just has these really funny stories. His family is awesome, and they just have all these funny stories of them together. You've got a brother and a sister, and you've got some funny sibling stories. So we were thinking about today and what exactly we wanted to, there's so much that we could talk about with Matt, but we thought, man, give the people what they want. They need to hear some funny Matt stories. So here's the segment of this episode is going to be just your favorite Matt story.
Yeah.
And who knows where this is going to go, but I thought this was a great segment. And we'll probably have to do this segment, tell a Matt story multiple times. But we're gonna start out and listen, this is daunting. I don't know, Blake, if you're having the same.
I know. In my brain, I'm running through all these scenarios and stories that I've heard and thinking, okay, what do we need to cover?
How do you choose?
Yeah.
Do you choose a ministry story? Because there's some hilarious ministry. Do you choose a pastor's kid story? Because there's some great stories there. Do you choose a siblings story? Because Matt and his siblings got themselves into all sorts of trouble. And I think that's what I think as I've just kind of, I've had to wrestle this and narrow this down. I think that's where I'm going to land. So if you're okay, I'm going to go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so Matt, my favorite Matt story is, I'll call this the Help Us story. And I think it takes place in a Walmart parking lot.
It's actually Circuit City.
Oh my goodness! Shout out to
Circuit City.
Shout out to Circuit City. May it rest in peace. So yeah, parking lot story. It's the Help Us story.
Yeah.
Matt, take it from
Yeah.
me.
So I don't remember how old I was exactly. Maybe about 12 years old, 13 years old, something like that. We went to as a family to Circuit City, and my parents left the three of us kids in the car. And now as a parent, I get why they do that, because when you take children to the store, sometimes it costs you more money.
Yeah.
And then it's also just the headache of that.
And back in the day, that was completely, like, nowadays people may go, oh my gosh, you left the kids in the car.
Exactly. Well, and I'm like 12 or 13 years old.
Yeah, completely legit.
But we had this GMC Safari van, this big box van.
These are like almost like
Lindsay's
conversion
family
vans.
Yeah, you could have a small basketball game in there, And so we're in there, we're hanging out, and mom, dad go in the store. It's nighttime, and I'm the oldest of three. Got my younger brother, my younger sister, and a lady pulls up next to us, this older lady, and I was like, hey, let's pull a prank on her. I was like, let's knock on the door and then like duck down and hide. Then we'll start saying, help us. I don't know where this idea came from, why this was a good idea. She pulls up, knock on the door. We start knocking on the window, help us. And we all duck and we're hiding. Do it 2 or 3 times. And next thing you know, a few minutes later, we're just hanging out and the cops show up. Police show up, and they pull in, and they're walking around the van with their flashlights pointing in at the van, looking in, and here I am once again. I'm the oldest of 3. I got us in this situation, so I open the door, and he's like, "Are you guys okay?" We're like, "Yeah, we're fine." He's like, "Well, there's a woman that called and said there was kids hollering, help me in the van."
My word!
Knock on the window, and so, but anyways. So he had to walk us inside Circuit City. Mom and dad are still inside.
Oh, no.
We found our parents, and of course, that's when the trouble began in that moment. And I just knew you really messed up in this moment.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Can you imagine as a parent, your kids are getting escorted into the store by the police?
Yeah, it was a pretty humbling moment there for sure. And to know, okay, you can't ever do that again. This is a serious thing. The cops are involved, and just knowing that seriousness in that moment for sure. 2
things from that story. One is a question for Matt, because he plays a role in that story that's kind of interesting. I think we need to know a little bit more about it. But the second is, we've got to talk about that van.
Yeah.
So GMC, what was it called?
It's
the GMC
Safari.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay's family had the Chevrolet version, which was the Savannah.
I think that's right.
Is that right? But it was the big box van, and you say you play a basketball game in there. Lindsay tells us stories. I mean, this was when seatbelts in the back seat, it wasn't that huge of a deal like when we were kids. And Lindsay tells stories of their family taking road trips, and her parents put a mattress in the back. Now, Lindsay has one other sibling, so they would take the seats out, put a mattress in the back for long road trips, and they would watch movies and sleep and just hang out in the mat. I mean,
my grandmother had an older model of, I think it may have been a GMC, I mean, it had like the blinds in the windows.
my word.
Yeah, my grandparents had the blinds. And
Yeah.
the metal blinds. We
That's
were
the
going to
upgrade.
Miami
Yeah.
one
They were
time.
so
I remember
noisy.
road tripping to Miami, and those blinds were going, like, man, this is kind of weird.
Yeah, she had
But
like an actual like TV in the console, you know. It was like, it was crazy. Now, I don't know why she had that, because she lived by herself. And we, you know, I don't think grandkids rode with her that often.
But parents do that. I mean, grandparents do that though. They kind of kick back into parenting, and they think they need all the things that parents need for the grandkids.
She had a van that would hold all the grandkids, apparently. So
that's awesome. If you owned a GMC or Chevrolet version of that van, we need to know about it. Will you email the show? We just need to know about it. We need to probably start a group at the church of people that have owned those vans. That's where really cool people.
The reality is, Kendall's just trying to find somebody that still has one, because he is in the market for one. Right?
You are right about that. You are right. I need a low mileage Savannah or Safari. With the blinds.
With the blinds.
I'm not looking for one without the blinds. I need the one with the blinds. But the second part of that story, Blake, that I don't know if you noticed it, but I think, as now I'm replaying Matt's stories, I think it's a theme. Matt said something about it was his idea. It was his idea. I had this idea that we would do this way. So walk us through kind of some of your sibling stories and like getting people in trouble. Was that your role?
Yeah, were you the
kind of the ringleader of the group? Did you always get your siblings into trouble?
Not necessarily. Not that I can remember. My parents may speak differently towards that. But I would not say I was the instigator or the one to kind of come up with these crafty, silly ideas. But in that moment, I don't know why that felt like a good idea, but that's what I did. But no, I would say probably not.
If we asked your siblings, would they agree with that?
I don't know. They might.
I think there's a few stories about your brother Justin, and I don't know. Like there's a few stories that I recall where you might have gotten him into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. There's a couple of those, and those were unfortunately older in life too. Like I was much more mature, but I was still causing trouble.
Okay, so you talk a little bit about Circuit City, and in Circuit City, you could get compact discs. I don't know if you young people remember compact disc. I recall a story with your brother with a CD incident. Clue us in a little bit on what that is.
Oh, this is going to be for those of you that are our age and old. There's all sorts of technology reference in this story that you're just going to love. I mean, I think we've got burning CDs in this story.
Yes,
and there's just get ready to geek out on old technology.
Old school. So yeah, I had actually I was about 19 at this time. Gone to Florida for one of my best friend's wedding, and while I was there, he pulls up Napster. And there's the first one.
There's one. Shout out to Napster.
He starts downloading all this music, and back in the day, then I was really into hip hop. Still, I'm into hip hop, but it was more, it's kind of that was a struggle of mine. Was just that explicit hip hop.
We have that in common.
I was in that world, and I'm in Florida, and he's got wide open access to all the music, and so he starts burning me a CD of some of the music that he had, and come back to Texas from the wedding. Have this CD in my Walkman, and actually
there's number 2.
Yeah, and so my brother's in high school at this time, and we're sharing a room. We lived at the church parsonage at that time, and we're sharing a room. And he had the Walkman, and he was listening to the music. He was playing basketball on the school team and all that, and so they would travel, and he'd take the music. And I really didn't think anything of it. And that was kind of a downfall of mine right there as the older brother, not knowing the impact that I was making in his life in that area of music at that time. But he had the Walkman under his bed, and we go out one night to go do something in town. Well, my sister had, for whatever reason, woke up and gone into our room, and she got in his bed, but she found the Walkman under the bed. So she starts listening to the music.
What's y'all's age difference?
We're all 4 years apart. So my brother's 4 years younger than me, and then she's 4 years younger than him.
Okay.
So, and then so we come back home, and he wakes her up to get her out of his bed, and she says, "Dad found your CD, or I found your CD under your bed, and you're in trouble." To my brother Justin, and immediately I start going into cover this up mode. And so I said, Justin, I said, when in the morning, just tell Dad, like it was some kid at school that he gave it to you or whatever. So the next morning, my dad takes my brother and sister to school, and Justin threw out a name, just said some kid's name. Hey, this kid at school gave it to me. So they pull up to the school that morning, and Dad says, who's that kid over there? And Justin says the name, and it's the same name that he said on the CD.
No.
So my dad said, well, tell him to come over here.
Oh, no.
He's like, I'm going to talk to him about the CD that he gave you. And my brother just immediately goes, Dad, actually, it was Matt. He's like, Matt who? He's like, Matt, my brother, Matt, And so my dad said his heart just sunk at that time. And he just began to get sick knowing that was the music that time, that influence. And then I came home and then he, I began to reap that benefit or the repercussions of that moment and just knowing, okay, I really messed up here. And I had done two things. I had provided the music, but I also had my younger brother lie for me and cover up for me, and just knew that was a bad time in my life at that moment. Yeah.
It's funny. Those stories are funny, and we tell those stories and we laugh. But actually, in the last episode, we were talking about that stretch in our life, that adolescent stretch in our life, where some of those kinds of stories are actually things that God uses to really form us, to challenge us. It sounds like that was kind of one of those for you. It's kind of like, hey, I have a responsibility not only just to have things that are coming into my mind be things that glorify God, but also to take care and lead my brother in the right way.
And see that influence there was big at that time.
That's awesome. So that's our segment, our first segment of tell us a funny story from Matt. Listen, friends, we've just had the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more, but I want to go into a little bit more on your journey from Florida to Texas, back to Florida, and then back to Texas. You've been here now for quite some time. Your family has ministered in this area for years and years and years now. What do you, in comparison to your time in Florida and now in Texas, why do you feel like God has, tuned your heart to this place, these people, this community? I mean, just walk us through kind of why this has been a staying point for you now for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I just think about, even the transition here, when I came here, I was 17, almost 18 years old. And it really was just kind of struggling with even that acceptance coming here. But once I got in, and once I started making some friendships, started getting involved, started serving in ministry here in East Texas, just really saw God begin to open that door of opportunity and see just that need. Because when I came here, I was under the impression, like, I knew I was called to ministry, but I really had no idea what that meant, like, or what that looked like. I just knew, God, I surrendered to ministry and whatever you want. And I really didn't see how that was going to play out until I started serving in youth ministry here in East Texas. Started volunteering, started serving. Then I eventually became a youth pastor, and just getting to know the people on a different level. One of the things that immediately I took from East Texas, because it was complete culture shock. I grew up 4 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, and so to trade that to come to the Piney Woods, at first, especially at that young of an age, it was just a big adjustment. But I began to see, the first thing I saw was that people in Florida specifically, it was more kind of black and white as far as Christianity goes, as far as, like, they were a Christian or they weren't a Christian. They were either living their life for Jesus or they weren't. There wasn't a lot that I saw at that time of the middle. But coming here, everybody's a Christian. That was kind of the mentality. Yeah, right. And just knowing, there's just good people here. The people have the Southern mentality. But also, as the more that you serve and the more that you're around people, you do see that genuine need. While a lot of people are good people morally, there's a good sense of just community and understanding how we treat each other. But there is still that spiritual need that's always there that we see. Just because you're a good person morally doesn't mean that you love Jesus and you have this relationship with him. So I began to see that, first of all, and just knowing, just as time has gone on and over the years, just seeing the opportunities that have continued to present themselves here. Of course, I met my wife here. She was at SFA, and I was a youth pastor at the time. And so, this town has a really significant part of our journey. And we left Nacogdoches at one point, but God called us back, 7 years ago. And here we are still serving. But just to see that need, that really is universal. But to see and experience it locally and to be around a group of people for so long, it's been really, really unique in this context. And so I really have appreciated the sense of community that we have seen here in East Texas, specifically in Nacogdoches.
Yeah.
We've been here for so long now. So that's been a really neat thing to go to the grocery store, to see people, to have relationships, to just kind of have an insight to people's lives and just to really walk them through so many different seasons of life, whether it's heartache or troubles or successes, victories, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. I just want to throw a question to both of you guys. I think that brings up a really interesting point. And we've now, Blake has obviously been in this community for his entire life, except for a blip in Houston, which we won't have to talk about today. But there's longevity in ministry here. Matt, you're kind of at a point, you're talking about, coming when you were 17, starting to serve at that point, and now have been here and pastored here for a number of years. I'm kind of getting to that point where I feel like I've been here a little while, and I mean, obviously not relative to some who've been here for forever, but I think that longevity plays a unique role in places like the Bible Belt, where that is a unique ministry context. The Bible Belt, where everybody's a Christian, longevity seems important because to kind of get beyond that moral Christianity and actually into the space in people's lives where real following of Jesus separates itself from just a Christian morality, that doesn't seem to just happen quickly. You gotta be in somebody's life over a long period of time to kind of get into that space and get beyond that surface level. Have you guys? I mean, am I crazy? Am I seeing that right? Have you experienced that?
That's exactly what I was thinking. I think there's this thing you've got to break through and gain some trust there with that kind of Bible Belt cultural Christianity type thing. I think in your place like Florida, and you could probably talk more to this, but there's a kind of an evangelism, like just I don't know. There doesn't have to be as much of a relationship to kind of start that conversation. But when the assumption is that everybody's kind of a Christian, you've got to really peel back some layers to get to some of that deeper spiritual talk. I mean, I think of people that I've grown up with, and that's a huge challenge to have those conversations with those people because, I've been around this all my life. And so that's kind of, surely I'm a Christian, but that's not always the case.
Have you seen that, Matt? Just as you've been here longer, that's been necessary to kind of peel back some of those layers?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I thought was so unique about Florida, even now looking back, is you see that it's full of a lot of people who come, who move down there, who it becomes such a transient state where people are kind of used to change. They're used to new people moving in, new people moving out. And in a community like this here in East Texas, where it's so established and there's a lot of heritage and a lot of family and just people being here long term, as an outsider, sometimes that's hard to establish.
It can be
trust.
Intimidating, yeah.
And so I kind of have I heard I've heard this motto a long time ago in ministry: people don't know how much you care till they care how much you know. And I think that's really true here, especially in a community where you feel like you've got to kind of establish that trust. You can have all this knowledge of the word or knowledge of scriptures or whatever it may be, but until you show that you actually care for them on their level, that's when you start to break through. And so I do think it's building that trust up over time before you can actually break through, especially with the accessibility of how many churches there are and how much gospel kind of saturation there is to a degree versus somewhere like Florida, where you might go a couple of miles before you see the next church.
Mm-hmm. I think the unique thing I've learned about, or what God has done in our lives and just being here longer term, is I used to always think about ministry in God calls you to a job or specific church or a specific role. When I was young, that's the way that, and I was in high school, senior in high school, when I started thinking, you know what, God keeps nudging my heart in that direction. That's what I thought it was going to look like, that God was going to call me to jobs, to roles, to churches. And moving here, I think one of the things that I'm really learning, I would say still very much in process of learning, is that not that God doesn't do that. I'm sure he does call you to jobs and roles and places, but God also calls us to communities and to peoples. And I've heard people express that on the mission field, but I always thought that was when you go somewhere else.
Right.
I think what we've learned so much about being here, and maybe that is unique to a small town sort of setting, is that God has given us a heart, not just for Fredonia Hill, but for this community and these people and this culture. And it seems really necessary in a place like this to buy into all of that, to embrace not just what this church is, but to embrace what this place is in order to be effective, in order to bring the gospel into that context. It takes a buy-in to the culture. And so I don't know, that's been something we've really been discovering. And I think that's an unfolding process. Have you experienced, I know being here, that's maybe a little bit unique, but Matt, have you experienced that as you've come from another context into East Texas?
Yeah. Buying into the culture, I think is a large part of it, and I remember, I'm just like, all this conversation is bringing back a lot of memories of kind of first moving into Texas. Yeah. And, like I said, coming from Florida, everybody's wearing, flip-flops and shorts and tank tops and all that kind of thing. And not that was my attire, but that's just kind of was a general theme there. But and I remember, I was like, everybody here is wearing like plaid shirts and boots and Wranglers.
They're all dressed like Blake.
And I was like, but then again, just realizing that that's the part that's really unique here. And so I remember kind of coming in thinking, well, I need to be like them. And so I went down to the local store and I got me some boots and I got me all these plaid shirts and these jeans. And I was like, I tried that for a season and I was just like, you know what, that's not my style. That's not for me. But to begin to understand, once again, to know and to show that care is there, and to begin to kind of immerse yourself in the culture and know how the people are and what's important to them and why they kind of operate the way that they do. It helps you as you learn that, as you kind of embrace that, to then begin to minister on a different level.
Yeah, hopefully that's encouraging as you're listening. Just whatever pocket of this community, or wherever you are, you may be listening outside this community, wherever you are, that so much of ministry takes place when you embrace the place for what it is, and then go, okay, God, what are you doing here? And it's contextualized for that place, whether it's where you work or maybe some hobbies that you run with a certain group of people. Embrace that culture and then bring the gospel into that context. And that's a long process, like you said, of building trust, and but it is well worth the long journey. So we're coming to the end of our time. This will, I promise, friends, this will not be the last time that Matt hangs out with us on this podcast, but we really appreciate the time, Matt. And as always, Blake, tell them how to write in if they've got different people they want to recommend for us to interview, or different topics they want to hear. How do they do that? Yeah,
it's real easy. You just email us at stc@fredoniahill.org, and we will get that, and we'd appreciate your suggestions and ideas of conversations and people we can talk to from our community.
Well, that's all for today. Matt, thanks for being in. And
thanks for having me.
We will see you guys later. Adios.
See ya.